My name is Nikichi Taifa, and I convene the Justice Roundtable, which is a coalition of over 100 organizations working in Washington on primarily federal criminal justice reform issues. And I'm just so very thrilled to be able to be in this very historic building, since at the end of the year, the Prince George's Police Department officers of color filed a lawsuit on some of the same types of issues, discrimination and retaliation, okay, for reporting other bad officers' conduct. So we wanted to bring it home and have some representatives from the Black Police Association, Hispanic Police Association. We wanted to bring some of the police experts here who've been working on this issue, dealing with law enforcement. We wanted to bring folk who are out there on the streets every day trying to expose police violence and police terror. We wanted to bring them all together to talk about these issues, which are very important. Now, I want to present my first question to Sergeant Boone and Captain Perez. Sergeant Boone, the United Black Police Officers Association, and Captain Perez, a Hispanic National Law Enforcement Organization. What are your organizations? Why did you form, okay, and what are there any issues within the PG Police Department in particular, or just policing in general? Just give us your perspective. We'll start with you, Sergeant Boone, and then we'll go to Captain Perez.
Start that.
Say it again.
Okay, I knew you would do this. I said, Joe, I'll make you speak first. We'll start off with Joe first.
All right, Captain Perez, you got the mic.
All right. Good evening. Thank you for inviting us here, and it's an honor to even be sitting on the stage with this group.
Could you put the mic just a little closer?
It's an honor to be here tonight, and it's an honor to be with this group of people on stage, first of all, and thank you. Well, if you have like a couple days, I'll tell you everything about PGPD. Since we don't, I'll tell you this. We had been working, both organizations have been working with the police department for, over 20 years on issues of race, discrimination, lack of minorities in certain areas of the police department. And up until recently, the last 3 years, this administration has chosen not to deal with the minority officers. And the thing is that most of the issues that we raise start in the community. For example, we witness other officers calling people in the community the N-word. We receive text messages. We have pictures like you've seen on TV where we have a training dummy that we shoot at. We tase an aspartame. We put a black face on it with an afro wig. So what does that train you to do as a police officer? What does that tell the officers that, just like that video you saw on TV, the bad black guy? That was no mistake. They didn't misspeak. That's what's in the subconscious. And those are the type of issues that we raise to the administration, and what they end up doing is they retaliate against us over raising those issues.
So what type of retaliation? Give us an example.
An example is transfer. In other words, I was in internal affairs. I was there as a sergeant all the way up until captain, and with prior administrations, when I saw something wrong, I was able to send an email up the chain and say, wait, hold on. This guy did this, which is similar to the other guy, and the only difference is our race. And I actually wrote that in the emails. And then that would cause them to think, okay, wait, hold it, I can't do that. I would witness them talk about citizens when they file a complaint. So you file a complaint, and the first thing they do is, if it's against a white officer, the first thing I hear is, oh man, that guy that filed the complaint deserved it because look, he's got a criminal history. He's a criminal. You know, they haven't even talked to not one person. Not only that, that has absolutely nothing to do with the actual complaint. It's always a rationalization. But what I noticed the most was, let Sergeant Boone do something, all right? He's already guilty before they even talk to anybody. Oh, he's a thug. We should have never fired him. And I'm not saying Sergeant Boone, but someone that looks like him. And that was the common theme that I saw. And I used to send emails up the chain of command. I was there from a sergeant up to a captain. And as a captain, I had a little more influence. And once these emails kept going up with the new administration, I'm out. You know, so those are the types of things that they do.
Okay, thank you very much. Sergeant Boone, let's hear from you.
Good evening. What's funny is we started this back in July of 2014, and one of the first individuals that reached out to us to kind of give us words of wisdom is Mr. Hampton. And we met right over at Ben's Chili Bowl. I don't know if he remembers that, but we met right over there, and he gave us words of wisdom, encouragement, and it's funny we're here tonight, and I'm right on the stage with him, so we've come a long way. And if you don't mind, we have a lot of people out here, and I don't want to just make it appear like it's just me and Joe, because we have a lot of people who have actually stood up.
Please.
So can the members of Himalaya and UBPO please stand up for me? These are some individuals who are standing with us, standing beside us, and they're there fighting the fight with us every day. And I just especially want to recognize my second vice president, Sonia Lancaster. She's right here. To kind of say what, piggyback off what Joe was saying, the problem for me and the reason why I want to continue this fight even more is even not only what Joe said and not what's happening in the community, but what I saw was, in addition, the administration, in my eyes, was definitely picking on our women. And for me, my wife is a retired U.S. Capitol Police officer. And I know she goes to work every day and feels threatened, harmed, and I can't help her because I don't work in the police department. I have a problem. So we can't allow our women to be treated a certain way because they think they can do it. I've had women come to me who've had miscarriages, women with illnesses that the administration just don't care about. So if you don't care about the people within, you're definitely not going to care about the people on the outside. So what we're doing now is we want to make sure we continue that fight. And the fight's just not within, the fight is with you. Any of you drive in Prince George's County can be susceptible to anything that can go wrong. We want to make sure that doesn't happen. We want to make sure that everyone has a fair opportunity. We want to make sure that people not get caught up in the quota system. It's amazing that looking at that movie is almost identical to what we're going through. So we just want to make sure that we're out, and we may seem small in numbers to them, but we're going to be very loud and we're not going anywhere.
Thank you very much. I want to turn to Jonathan now. Jonathan Smith, can you talk a little bit about, at least what you can, about the legal status of the case against the PG Police Department and your perspective with respect to holding police departments accountable during your time at the DOJ?
Sure, thank you. Can people hear me? Yeah. Good. Well, so it's always intimidating to be on the stage with Nkechi. I think of myself as relatively high energy. Nkechi makes me feel absolutely laconic. It's really remarkable. She pointed out we started doing work around mass incarceration before we called it mass incarceration. Shows you how old we are. But it's an honor to be here. You know, I was sitting here thinking, I have had the honor to be a criminal justice reformer as a civil rights lawyer since the mid-1980s, and have represented lots and lots of people in police misconduct cases, and prison and jail litigation, a whole range of things. And not once has anyone ever asked me to commit a courageous act. I'm a lawyer, I do the things that lawyers do, but every one of my clients has had to commit a courageous act, to stand up and say what was happening to them was wrong. And these two gentlemen and the other people in the audience have done that. And they've done that at great personal risk and expense. And we've heard a little bit about that. And I just want to make a really quick point, and I'll get to answer your question. But if I could just do this first. It is what the risk that they place them at is, and we heard a lot about it in the movie, and I've been talking to people around the country, not just these officers, but other officers that I've worked with when I was with the Department of Justice and other litigation that I've brought. When you talk to officers who object to what is happening in the police department, who think that what is happening in the police department is wrong, there is a fear about what's going to happen on the job. There is a fear about losing your career and not getting promoted or being pushed out. But there's a more significant fear that sits behind the blue wall, and that's the fear that you're going to be placed in danger. And time and again, we've seen officers who are placed in the most risky, the people who have come forward to say that the behavior of the department is wrong, placed in those risky situations. And the stress is not knowing whether people have your back is immense. And that is how the blue wall works, is that everybody's got to have each other's back, no matter what it is. And so the courage that these officers and other officers in the country who object to the wrongful conduct, the targeting of the African American community, the criminalization of people because of the color of their skin, or their gender, or their LGBT status, or the language that they speak, or the country that they come from, to stand up and say that that is wrong is an act that not only places your career at risk, places your life at risk. And so I think we really have to honor what people have done to come forward in that movie, and we saw the damage that it did to people, but the real courage that these officers have in coming forward. And one of the things that has most moved me about this case was from the moment we met the officers in Prince George's County, their concern was about the way in which the conduct of the department and the way where they were being treated affected the way policing was being done in the community. And so it was really very moving to us when we took this case to know that this was about officers who were sacrificing their career to make policing better, to affect what's happening to young men and women in the community. So I really, my hat is off. A case was filed. We are at the very, very beginning stages of the lawsuit. We are awaiting the response from the county. They've hired a very fancy law firm, the Roundtable law firm out of the county did out of Baltimore, and they've entered a small army of lawyers who have entered an appearance in the case. So we expect that they're not going to roll over easy. It's going to be a long, hard battle, but we know that we have justice and right on our side, and that with the courage of these men and others in the audience and others who are standing up, we are confident that the case will prevail. What we see here in these cases, to get more broadly at the question you asked about, we saw nationally when I was at the Department of Justice, what we see here is reflected in every major police department, and not so major police departments that we investigated, is that I can't tell you the number of conversations I had with officers who would say, pull me aside, I'd be in an elevator with them or being escorted, and they'd say to me, you have to do something about the accountability. There's a lot of bad things happening in this police department. And I really hope, and that places me in danger, because when I go out on the street, people hate me for what other officers do. And I don't want to do those things. And I have, this is the way the department, can you just, but don't ever tell anybody that I said that to you. I don't want anybody to know that I was talking to you and said that. And we see this reflected time and again, that throughout departments, that there is a cohort of people, often, but not always, officers of color, very more frequently than not women, officers who talk about the need to bring reform within the department. And one of the reforms that I think that is important to just put on the table, and we're not going to have time to really discuss it at length, is we at the Department of Justice, and a lot of the work that lawyers do, goes to the very technical way in which police departments operate and how their accountability systems work, and when a complaint can be filed, and how the complaint will be reviewed, and who gets to review it, and what happens at the end of the day. But the fundamental question that communities and often officers who are seeking change want to talk about is what's the role of policing? And what is public safety? And how do we think about the role that police have partnering with communities around the creation of public safety? And it is not arresting people for the sake of arresting people because there's a crime, but it's thinking about what is going on in communities that make people feel unsafe, and make people unsafe, and how can police partner? And that is a conversation that often never happens. And that's something we can't get through this lawsuit. We're not going to get through this lawsuit. The people in April are making this conversation happen, and Eugene are fighting to make this conversation happen. And I think if we're going to rescue policing, it's going to be because of the courage of people inside and the extraordinary courage of the organizers outside who are doing the real hard work of bringing these questions to the fore.
So, thank you so very much, Jonathan. I'm glad you brought up this inside-outside, because that's the reason why I put the panel together the way I did. I'm going to save the outside for just a moment, because yes. And I want to, well, God, Vaughn, I don't know if you inside or outside. What are you, you know? Vaughn, but Vaughn, you know, first of all, I just want to personally say thank you to you, because prior to 30 years ago when I met you, I had a blanket perception of law enforcement. Okay? It wasn't good.
You were an argument.
Yeah, you're right. But when I met you, I said, all right now, okay. But I remember a case from a long time ago when the LAPD was being investigated, and one of the officers was quoted in a deposition as saying, and I'm quoting, they give me a badge, they give me a gun, they give me 50 G's to have some fun. And you know, that kind of was like the mentality, you know. As a former Metropolitan Police officer and someone who did not have that type of mentality, what is your perception? What do you make of what's going on today? Is there a difference between today and yesterday? And if there is not, why? Talk to us.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to talk a little bit about it. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about it a little bit. I had some real gut reactions to what was on the screen, and I want to say this. I want to say I told you so, but that's too easy. And what I'm talking about is because I served on the Metropolitan Police Department from 1970 to 1994. So there are those who say those were the rough years. Well, it really wasn't rough to us because we were together. Plus, we decided that we wasn't going to take that. There were actually fights in roll call rooms when white officers would use the N-word because we wasn't going to stand by and allow that happen. We reported police officers for police brutality, and we were strategic about it because we had elders when I got there that told me how to operate, and I followed those instructions, and then we started a black police organization along with all the other things. What you see up there is not just in New York, it's all over policing because reform hasn't worked. That's why I don't use the term. Police departments to work for people, work for communities, we need to restructure not only policing but the criminal justice system because it doesn't work right. It works exactly the way they want it to work, but it doesn't work for us. I guess what we focused on is what Brother Boone and them are focusing on now. For those of you all who are close to my age, and maybe one or two, maybe as old as I am, there were people in this community who worked along with us because we knew that we couldn't depend on those in the police force, like Goldie Johnson, like Ab Jordan, like Gloria Raymond, like Doug Moore, like all of those people. And we worked an inside-outside thing. I would tell everything. As a matter of fact, I provided paperwork for them because that's what you're supposed to do. Because what they were doing, we had the same interests that Boone and them had. If it didn't work for us, we saw that it didn't work for our community. We wasn't separated. I was an in, regardless of what I was in the uniform. As a matter of fact, they treated me like that. But I had a thing for them, and I want to tell Boone and them the thing. It didn't take me long to figure out Nikita, that police officers, a lot of them that were involved in that behavior were cowards. They were cowards. And the way you handle a coward is that you intimidate and know that I intimidate you. So I would tell them regularly, you don't think that I carried this gun and wouldn't use it. I'm very serious. I'm very serious. And I would have used it on them too, and then I would have told the story. And the story would have been mine. So no, I'm serious. And I said that a many times. The officer who was standing in one place, that's not new. There were a whole lot of officers in my time that were assigned to stand on one place on a wall. So, it's a cultural problem. It's a systemic cultural problem. And the way you have to do it, I guess in one way, I'm sad in the sense that we did do an awful lot where Jonathan worked. We had a partnership with the special litigation branch of DOJ when it was much more aggressive. But the fact of the matter is that we had victories, but we did not dig down deep enough in terms of disturbing the systemic foundation of racism and discrimination. And as a result of that, it reared its ugly head again, along with other things. And then plus, the government has no real taste in its mouth for regulating policing. You can say whatever you want to say, but they're not going to regulate 18,000 police departments. That's just not what they're going to do. And so you can hope for maybe something in between. Having said that, again, there needed to be continuity. Continuity in the sense of black organizations, black law enforcement organizations moving and continuing the struggle in terms of digging down deep to address the systemic foundational issues around racism and policing actions. Things like public safety and all of it, but you have to be able to work with the community because that's where the real strength is. The real strength was in Nikita, the real strength was in Archie, the real strength was in the brothers and sisters in this community and other communities that we met all over the world, because there's a National Black Police Association in the UK. And it's not because they just wanted to have a sister organization, because black folk over there get treated like shit. And everywhere else, even in Africa, there are black police organizations. So I guess there's time to celebrate, but there's also some reflection that needs to take place from time to time about how much work we did, the result of it, and how much work we still have to do, and why are we doing it, having to do it over and over and over again.
Yes, okay, thank you very much, Ron Hampton. I appreciate that. I'm glad you mentioned the 18,000 police departments across the country, because it really wasn't until the Ferguson case that I realized that there was so many. Daggone, I did not even know there were that many, 18,000. And I'm going to bring my next question towards Kanya Bennett there. So with over 18,000 police departments throughout the country, it's argued that policing is basically a state and local issue, and reforms must be centered there. But Kanya, are there reforms that can be accomplished through federal advocacy? And if there are, what are they?
Thanks, Nikichi, and thanks for screening this film, and thanks for assembling this panel. So yes, certainly as a federal lobbyist focused on criminal justice issues and policing specifically, I think that there's a critical role for the federal government to play with respect to police reform. So obviously I just heard Ron talk about how we're not going to reform 18,000 departments from the federal level. I was having a conversation at the start of this program with some former U.S. attorneys who also pushed back a little bit, and it was good to hear that, because I don't think that folks realize that there is a level of accountability that needs to happen by the federal government. And we have certainly seen some of that happen. Certainly under Jonathan's leadership at the Civil Rights Division, we've seen what an aggressive and what an active Department of Justice can do, what an active administration can do as we encounter fatal police shootings and they rise to a level of national attention. We saw President Obama organized the President's Task Force on 21st Century Policing that was looking for accountability at all levels with respect to policing. So yes, absolutely, I do think that there is a role for the federal government to play. And at the very least, I think that the federal government should be interested in where its federal dollars are going. So every year, millions and millions of dollars are given to local police departments. And for over 15 years, $6 billion in burn jag has gone to law enforcement for their programming. And we have seen over almost $7 billion from the Department of Defense go to local agencies in the form of military weapons and equipment and other equipment that those things are being used to police our communities. So at the very least, we need to see what's happening with those dollars. We need law enforcement to be accountable, and certainly that oversight should result in legislative action. And so with that money, you can certainly tie requirements to local police departments. There's no reason why we shouldn't have data on police and community encounters at the federal level. The federal government collects data on all kinds of things that you wouldn't even imagine. The federal government collects data on, but yet we really don't have a clear sense on how many people are killed by law enforcement every year. We also want to stop the militarization of local law enforcement. This is a federal program. The federal government should be talking about what equipment is appropriate for law enforcement to have and not to have as they engage in community policing. So there is certainly room for the federal government to play here. I don't think it takes away from any of the reforms that we need to see through litigation, through internal police department reforms, through the activism that's going to happen in our communities. But yes, just want to drive home the point that the federal government has a role to play here, and we all, as taxpayers, need to make sure that the federal government is doing its job with respect to local police.
Okay, thank you so very much, Kanye. And so I'm going to group April and Eugene together with this question. You determine who's going to talk first, who's going to talk, second. But there was another case where police were talking about the issue of the throwdown, which is a gun that is placed, or some type of weapon placed by the side of someone who happens to be the victim of unjustified police shooting or something along those lines. And one of the testimonies was that many times police officers could do things like that because they knew they could get away with it. This was part of this culture that we're talking about, this lack of accountability, this police code of silence and the like. So what I really want to ask you, you all are activists and advocates on the ground, on the outside, demanding visibility and accountability and transparency and the like. From your perspective, how do you see things, what's going on? And also, what do you think about the advocacy and action that is coming from the inside?
Yeah, that's a lot. So the throwdown law actually, I'm going to call it law because a lot of things that MPD does, they actually believe is law. I'm talking about officers on the street. So there was a murder in, there was 3 police murders by MPD in 6 weeks, so sometimes I get the dates a little backed up. But in July, Marquise Alston was murdered in Southeast on 1st Street. And it was live. One of my friends was live. And you could see them not having any gun and then throwing the gun next to his body. And it was streamed live. We reposted it. It's on 1 million pages. You see all of this. You see them move the body. Like, we taped it. They did not tape off the apartment building. So the tenants were taping. Nothing happened. We have all the videos. We just started saving all of them now on our YouTube page. Something has happened in DC that has completely numbed people to all of this. That I have definitely part of that. Most people don't understand that DC is the most policed city in the country. There are 32 plus that we've counted independent police departments. I'm talking about offices. All of the libraries have police, park police, housing police, metro police, FBI police, everything you can think of, treasury police, federal protective services, all of these things that we can talk about. And so there is two things. One is that in looking at the quotas is not something, and even in passing, talking to officers in MPD, that they stress as much as it's just, and I'll use Mary Bowser's words, lawless. It's just literally lawless. Where there's so much that can happen, because one of the things you'll probably hear about is our Black Lives Matter DC versus Bowser lawsuit, where we're fighting to get stop and frisk data that they've been required to get since 2016. And one of the things that's obviously clear is as to why, and that came out of the 21st century policing initiative, was that they've never had to record information that would not even just shine a light, because we already know that this is happening, but to justify the anger people feel in the community, to give people like me and Eugene, who've been testifying for years, some credibility. Because we've been saying it, and even their little numbers are coming out saying that, 8 in 10 people stopped and frisked in DC are black. I can almost guarantee, what we don't say is I can almost guarantee the other ones are brown. That it's not gonna come up that those folks are white. And we make 47% of the population in DC. And so there are parts of me, and I'll be really blunt, I had a lot of different feelings about the film, and I have a lot of different feelings about when police officers come forward. The thing that stuck with me in this movie was that everything that they experienced when they came is exactly what I experience every day. For speaking out on my community, but even then, it's not as bad as, let's say, I don't know if you all have been following what's happening in Deanwood, but those guys that we're working with over there have anywhere between 6 and 23 arrests with no charges, all dismissed. This is a regular phenomenon. Jump outs that Peter Newsham and Kathy Lanier have testified for years in front of the council don't exist. We have videos, we have hundreds of videos, and no matter how often we show them, no matter how many times we tell people about them, it just doesn't happen. But watching the health issues that the police officers were going through, worrying about their safety, and Eugene can tell you, like, being a highly surveilled individual, both MPD as well as nationally. I have a court case next Friday. It'd be cool if y'all came out. To where MPD has 9,000 that they've disclosed this time. They always seem to find 3,000 right before our hearings. 9,000 documents just on me. MPD, for real. Like, my life is really boring, but okay. And each one of those, the trauma, the being afraid of violence, of no one being there, of being alone. Like, I was watching both of y'all guns coming up under your thing, and I realized every day I'm traumatized as fuck. I absolutely am. People will see me lose all train of thought when the police lights go on. Because I've been in situations when I'm by myself that anything could happen, and it does. The one time I didn't have my camera, I left it at home, just never again. I met an officer at 7-Eleven. He had been terrorizing me for like 2 years though, whatever. That's when I learned his name that night. I didn't have my phone, I'm trying to tape him because I know it's him, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't have it. He's like, oh, I remember you from the video, Miss Coggins. And they all know my full name, but he said, oh, you seem to be getting a little angry. I need to call the backup because and I'm like, nah. And I was like, and nobody, there was men sitting outside. I was like, do y'all know I came outside and I didn't say anything. They're like, I don't know, man, I don't know. And I don't blame them, but I also knew that like what happens to me happens to those officers. And I have spoken to officers that in MPD have had in their supervisors' offices been punched by officers, and they talk back. 5th District, look it up. And there are officers who come to us. I'll be blunt, come to us a lot with screenshots, with all those things. Black women who like, I can't actually have a relationship with because of my personal safety, but I know now that they are out there. But I still don't know how police coming forward, because there was still like seeping with meritocracy, right? The fact that the one officer got promoted and his statement was like, we can't, they can't do anything but promote me. It was no mistake then that after that, the case was dropped. They already did the thing. Bratton got to sit down. They did the thing. This is how it works. And so I said to myself, I was almost in tears, like, yeah, so I'm gonna go in there on Friday. They're not gonna give me documents on myself. I don't get paid for that. I don't get a gun or a badge. And some of those things are a privilege. And not a privilege because I couldn't go out and get a gun, blah, 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 no. But there is a privilege that you belong to a group of people that even together have some kind of power people are listening to. There's no one following Black Lives Matter activists around like the police are trying to screw y'all. And so there's a part of me that says like, it's great. But also, if it was me, I'm a federal government employee. So there's times when I'll tell my boss, I am not signing that because I will not be on CNN. And that I have gotten out of conversations or put my job on the line at any point because I'm not going to do that. And so I say sometimes, like, this is a job too. Like, we have to be real. Being a police officer is being a job. It's a job. Regardless of how you feel about that, every day you come to work, you are still part of that system. Completely.
Okay, we have different perspectives, and we really appreciate your perspective that you bring. April, let's hear from Eugene, and then we're going to hear from the audience.
Well, first and foremost, thank you, Nkechi, for inviting me to be here. I mean, I know a lot of y'all know Nkechi, some of y'all don't know, but when people say who's on the front line, that's the definition of the front line, especially for our political prisoners. There are a lot of people that forgot about that. Yeah, it was interesting to watch the film because I had read the New York Times article about the young man in Rikers and the New York Times Magazine article about the officers, so it was interesting to see the two stories kind of overlaid together and to see it in real time. And I would really suggest, even if you just saw the film, that you go back and read those articles, especially the one about the young man in Rikers Island. I just want to quickly say shout out to the family of Khalif Browder, who was also legally arrested in a number of months on Rikers. He took his own life when he came out because of the trauma that he experienced. And then also I just wanted to shout out one of my spiritual mothers, Mary Gray Hopkins, who's not here, but her son, Gary Hopkins Jr., killed by Prince George's County Police in 1999. No justice at all. So just wanted to say that. But I feel kind of two ways about it, and I'll connect them, starting maybe from the front to the back. I think that when we talk about the issue of police reform, in some ways, police officers coming forward is the most effective testimony, because when we talk about the issue of police violence, murder, terror, whatever you want to call it, you don't really have to convince the people who are victimized by it. And even some people who relatively excuse it, usually if you are black, and I start talking to you about the police, we can reach some level of common ground about some level of misconduct and bad experiences we've all had, right? So you don't really have to convince people, but the people you have to convince the most are the people who don't have it directed at them. And I think the reality is a lot of those people are desensitized to hear people like April and I for a lot of different reasons, and one being the misinformation that's put out there by the police department about us. I mean, when you have a police chief that's saying that just having a public hearing questioning stop and frisk practices was emboldening criminals. Well, like, okay, of course people who view the police as an institution of safety will then say, well, I'm not gonna listen to them because they're emboldening criminals. So when you have that kind of reality, I think people will hear it from a police officer, principally because if these are the people you believe will keep you safe. If they are saying this policy is not actually keeping you safe, it has a higher level of proof for a lot of people. I don't know if that's right, it probably isn't, but it is the way the world is. So on the one hand, I think it can be very useful and very effective for illustrating a lot of the things that we have to say, and also just the workings of the criminal justice system, which I think you saw, pretty well. I mean, the way that judge tried to pressure that kid to take that deal, there's like thousands of kids every single day that is happening. What is only like 2% of trials ever, or cases ever even make it to trial. So, I think it's important to have people who are really in there with that level of societal privilege speaking out, and just generally morally, I think if you work at any job and something is disproportionately harming other people, you should speak out. But I'll circle all around to say, and to pick up on what Ron was saying about police reform, I'm also not a big advocate of police reform either, because I feel like it's actually an easy excuse to get away from the real issues we're talking about. Like, to me, a lot of of what we do, April and I look at it a little bit more like a union negotiation, right? We can find some common ground at some point, right? Like, in different ways, different times, we can negotiate and find some things we can all agree on. But at the end of the day, if you're the company and the boss, you gotta maximize the profits. And if I'm the worker, I'm trying to make my life the best possible life I can. So we don't really have the exact same interests, even though we can make it work out. I think that, for whatever reason, the only issue in our society that we've decided can never change is crime, right? I mean, imagine if you stood up, if it was the Global Fund meeting to raise money at the end of the year, and you stood up and your gala speech was, what would be fantastic if only 10 to 15% of people just didn't had AIDS. Just 10 to 15%, not how we have now. Let's just reduce it, let's not make it a big deal. No one would accept that, because the whole thing is we need to end AIDS, we need to end cancer, we need to fight poverty, all these different things except crime. That's just the way it is, it's always the way it's gonna be. Well, if that's the case, how come we didn't have any organized police departments until the 18th century? You just have to ask yourself, human beings lived for 20,000 years without any sort of specialized force to either govern ourselves or keep security amongst ourselves that was separate from the masses of people. So this is not the natural humanity of how things are, and if what we're saying is, well, people deserve to be safe, my question isn't, how do I get a police officer more effectively to stop someone from doing an armed robbery? My attitude is, well, why does someone feel like they need to do an armed robbery in the first place? When we're talking about issues of domestic violence, why are we just talking about, well, what can the police do when they show up at someone's house, and not what do we do about patriarchy and sexism and the idea that men think that women belong to them? We can go on and on and on for every single issue, but at the end of the day, until we address that underlying issue, the same things are going to come over and over again. And I'll just close by saying, Google this. Washington, D.C. Spark. It's a website that someone put together of a lot of old protest photos. 1930s. They're talking about police violence in D.C. It could literally be 2019 if you just changed the date and had some updated photos. Maybe just made the photos color. You literally could think it was today. And that's kind of what I mean here, is that we're constantly looking at the surface level and not the deeper level, and I think that's where our real challenge is.
Wow, thank you. Thank you, ma'am. It's your turn now. We talking about reform, we talking about transformation. It's very pertinent issues that are raised. I see a hand right there, if you want to stand up and raise your question. You? Okay. You didn't think I was going to call on you, right?
What are you talking about?
Yes, did you raise your hand? I know you didn't think I was going to call on you. Just calmly give your question.
This issue about police reform, I worked a lot in this area of police abuses in the black community, particularly here in D.C. And you're talking about piercing a wall that is backed up by a gray wall, that is backed up by a black wall. Judges and prosecutors. A lot of times I find that I've been involved in cases with people in the community who have been arrested and have been maliciously prosecuted by the United States Attorney's Office, knowing they had no cause. Knowing they had no cause. And the judge knew it and did not make a probable cause determination. And the judge failed to do that, and they cannot move forward. But they do anyway. And then they put these people under all these penal controls and keep them there, keep coming back until you plead guilty. Another thing.
Question.
Well,
Give a question.
Question. Well, about the black and gray wall, I'd like to address that. Also, in terms of the police stop and frisk, this is stop and search. Police are not patting. They're feeling with their hands. Those are searches. That's investigating.
Thank you. Does anyone want to address? those comments, question?
Well, first of all, on stop and frisk, you're right. Often those things are conflated to one thing. They're under the law. They're actually two separate analyses, and you're right about that. I think raising the question of prosecutors is really important in this context, because prosecutors are the only players in the criminal justice system for which there is no review. Their decisions are not reviewed by anybody. They're not reviewed. Police officer makes a decision, it's reviewed by the prosecutor and the courts. Courts make a decision, there's an appellate court. Prosecutors, nobody looks over their shoulder. So prosecutorial reform, and some of it, there's exciting stuff going on. It's not gone anywhere close to far enough, but what's going on in Philadelphia, what's going on in Chicago, with what's going on actually in Houston, some new prosecutors that have come in through the elected process in response to some of the stuff, are doing some good stuff. They're not going as far as they promised to go, and they're not going as far as we all think we hope they go, but there is some real reform in some models. So I think it's worth thinking about prosecutors.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, Nikichi. That's the other Nikichi over there.
I am named after Nikki Fowler.
Actually, we should bring up, yeah, let me see them on the mics. So that, yeah.
Can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay. I'm a community advocate. After working with communities, one of the things that I realize is one of the things I've always had an issue with, not as of recently, but when you don't see my humanity, I have a problem with you. You can be a man, you can be white, you can be rich, doesn't matter. That's where my fight comes in. See my humanity. So that's my advocacy. See the humanity of communities. One of the things that was most interesting to me in the film was when the 12 were sitting at the table with the community activists in the area and having this discussion about, hey, will you back us up? And one of the things that was prominent about that is what I tell organizations, what I tell rich people is the communities, black people don't trust you. We've had millions and millions of reasons to trust you. All these videos and YouTube about people getting killed, we've always known that. That's news to y'all, not us. So what I wanted to know is, and anyone can answer this really, but what do you do when you have officers who are willing to come forward and, tell exactly what is going on, and you see how much of what they go on in the department, just like April says, is what happens to us in the street every day. But how do you get with community members who don't trust you because you're police officers, regardless? At the end of the day, you have tokenized and hurt us. How do you build that bridge and bond?
Okay, thank you.
Well, I guess I'll start off. The first thing you do is you have to build that bridge with the community. So the first thing you do is you reach out to the community, which is what we have done. We've reached out to the community's reached back out to us. That's the first start. To speak on the community side, I believe they'll probably have a better perspective than I will. I'm part of the community. I don't make feel I'm not a part of the community. Right. But as a police officer, when we're out doing what we're doing and we want to expose what we know is wrongdoing, we need your help the most. Not because it's personal to me. What I'm saying is I know it's going to affect you. It could affect my kids, your kids. So if I reach out to you, you have to understand when I reach out to you, just doing what I'm doing right now, I have what you see people standing here in a lawsuit, that's all I have.
Yeah.
So I need you, I don't need you to protect me safety-wise, but I need you to have my back so that way as we expose it, that you'll be a part of it, that the powers that be will understand. You need to understand that the chief is appointed. And the more pressure that you give, where DC is the mayor, but in Prince George's County is the county exec, the more pressure that you can put on them, if you stay together. A lot of times, people don't stay together. If you don't get an immediate response, a microwave response within, 3 or 4 days, and everybody's going to go off. And they know that, and they'll sit back and they'll watch. How long are you going to stay together? And how much are you going to fight? And if you splinter, they'll appease 1 or 2 in the community, make you happy, and then everybody go start talking about it's still the same old. You have to stay together, and you have to support, the same way we have to support you, you have to support us in that same way.
Yeah, well, you know, it's a good question. I actually also got a similar question by sister at we're going to, it's a public administrators conference, and she was actually working in the gun unit of the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office. And I said then, and I'll say now, if you are a law enforcement official, you're a civilian employee in law enforcement, or whatever it may be, and you think you have something that's relevant to what we're talking about, stop and frisk, police misconduct, you can definitely come to us, and we will keep it confidential. I mean, we're not lawyers, you know, so you don't have like legal confidentiality, but you know, they have to do a lot to get us to say anything. But at the end of the day, you know, we want to expose these things. And I think it's very important for people to know that from our perspective, that we are very open to that and very open to hearing about that. Like April said, we do hear about it. I've been stopped like on the street randomly by officers to be like, look at this. Oh, you know, just, you know, check this person out, or, you know, watch for that. So, you know, it already happens a little bit. And I think that for sure from at least, I can speak for Stop Police Terror Project, and I'll let April speak for BLM. But yes, we want people to come to us. We're open to it. We're open to keeping it confidential, and we want to get the information out there because at the end of the day, that's what we're here to do, is to prove that a lot of these positive, not positive policies are exactly what we say they are. So whatever goes towards that goal.
So what I want to do at this time, I want to see who else has questions. Raise your hand. Okay, this is what I want you to do. I want you to go over there and stand by Mariama, whoever, Mike. Each person just say what your questions are, and then you all can kind of globally give your closing answering as you. Okay, we're going to be short and concise because we really have just a couple of minutes, but I want to make sure we get everyone has the opportunity to express what they want to express, and then as part of your very brief closing, you can address whatever you want to address. All right, let's vote.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, how you doing? I'm an artist, activist, and educator, and first I just want to say thank you for all of you all that are speaking out. Yeah, let's give them a round of applause. You mentioned a couple of things as far as we have to get to the source and not deal with, of course, the symptom of some of these issues. I appreciate that. Serpico, I remember that film in 1971, which the same issue is being dealt with. If anyone's not familiar with that film, check it out. Al Pacino's a real situation, and he was put in dangerous situations, and he said he just would not comply, but he also wasn't going to tell. So I really want to really encourage you all to continue to come out. I think as you all continue to come out and stay on the course, I need to know where the honest officers are, and a whole lot of people in my community do. We'll come out and support you. The more you come out, now that we know that some of you are out here in New York, my hometown as well, we'll come out and support you. And silence is complicity. So a lot of times the guilt is often associated with officers because the officers are also silent, even though they know what's going on. And I really appreciate I have no question, just a comment. I'm really glad that you all are putting yourselves out there, and I really encourage the community to stand behind you. All right? Thank you very much.
Pass it on.
Since she doesn't have a question, I have two. So first, I'd just like to thank you all. I'll be very short and very quick. But the first thing I'd like to ask is, what can we do from all perspectives? From the legal perspective, from the policy perspective, from the law enforcement perspective, what can we do to support and what can we do to further? And the second thing I'd like to ask is, since you all are so amazing, and you guys are all sitting on this panel for a reason, how can we make the representation look like what's here tonight, being every single law firm, being every single NGO, being every single law enforcement, police department, whatever. Thank you.
Hi, thanks. I just wanted to ask if any of you could speak to the issues of quotas and revenue generation through policing in DC specifically.
And my question is do you guys have a documentary crew yet? Do you have a documentary crew yet for Prince George's County? You do have one?
No, we're looking.
I would be happy to speak with you. And then I have one more question, is I would like to know how we approach the federal government, the DOJ, to take this further.
Well, first let me close right now.
Okay, last question.
Very quick question. It has to do with what is happening with police training, because whenever you hear officers who murdered somebody because they thought, unarmed people because they thought, they had a weapon or something. And they always say, my training, maybe do it. In Prince George's County, a cab driver told me that his son was in training and that they train people, they train the officers to shoot to kill because it's cheaper for them to settle lawsuits if the person is dead. So can you, just address that, the training?
Okay, great. We're gonna let everybody have the opportunity, very, very brief. You all have a microphone over this side, who wants to start? Go ahead.
Okay, so all of them.
No, however you want to answer. What can we do, quotas and revenue generation, approach the DOJ to take this further, training to shoot to kill, those were some of the, yeah.
So I was going to speak right before about the community and policing and point out that it is asking us to have your back, but we know still the majority of police don't have ours. So one of the things that doesn't happen, and it happens all the time, even on these panels, is that we go back to how much we can back the police. But are the police going to come out then to our marches when we're marching for folks that have been killed or brutalized by police? And so what I think is that there's still a very lopsided way that we look at how we address these issues, and that somehow the community is always responsible for both backing the police and getting ourselves to back the police. And so I say that to say that's not, and we do take those requests from police all the time, but I think that it is hyper-local. And so each one of these officers that is taking a risk know that whoever it is that they have also seen be brutalized or somehow unjustly treated, that those people still suffer with that in their lives. And I think that's, so we have to look at like the total I guess, picture of how that works. I will also say that it's very important that people always look at us activists as never doing policy stuff, which we do. Google us if you'd like to. But the other part of that is that people worked really hard on Ferguson, and then we're told that police departments didn't have to honor the agreements, right? Or here in DC, where MPD is getting away with not enforcing law, and that we're in court and MPD is telling the judge doesn't have jurisdiction to tell them to follow the law. So just to think about, like, when we use the word reform, what are we saying, and how fast does that look, and what are we doing, like Band-Aids, and what are we doing for like the long term?
Okay, Band-Aids versus long term.
I think I will speak quickly on about training. I think I'm going to ask about training. And the one thing I always say about this is you can't out-train someone's personal biases or beliefs. So that's hard to out-train. So with that, that's why when I was in the background investigations unit, when you have someone from the outside coming into a community that's either majority black, white, Hispanic, whatever it may be, the question I ask is, how did you know about the county? How do you know, what do you know about the county? And then secondly, what are you willing to do in the county outside of your work hours? How are you going to contribute to the community? So those are the questions that I asked. But to answer the question, we are taught to shoot center mass. I think someone asked that question. But the biggest thing is that you can't out-train someone's personal belief.
Let me just add a little bit to that, a little deeper. You know, the bottom line is with police hiring, at least for us and a lot of agencies, we can't find qualified minorities. Why? Because of what you saw in this film. We stop people, and when we stop people in Prince George's County, we keep a record of that. So if I stop you 5 times, search you, strip you down in the middle of the street, embarrass you, all right, even though we may not even arrest you, there's a record of that. So when this kid becomes eligible to apply for a job, at least with us, we're gonna look at those stops. And we're gonna say, oh, wait, hold it, this guy was stopped 5 times in a high drug area. We can't hire him. So what do? We resort to going to Pennsylvania somewhere, to some rural area. We hire these kids that never been around city folks, and then they get scared when a situation happens.
Yes, I wanted to respond to some of the questions about the federal government. What can we do to encourage them to advance police reform? What can we do to ensure that this Department of Justice, this administration, is more accountable when it comes to local policing and the resourcing that they're giving them? I wanted to just share a quote that Acting Attorney General Matt Whitaker said just a few months ago when millions of dollars were awarded to local police. He said, in the Trump administration, we back the blue. And I think that that just kind of sums up sort of where this administration is. It's fine, you can back the blue, but you can't back the blue and not back Black lives. And you can't not back our communities. And so I think it's the responsibility of all of us in this room to make sure that we are holding our federally elected officials accountable. So, everyone's focused with, the daily circus that goes on with respect to Russia or climate change or any sort of shiny new thing that has captivated the headlines that sort of detracts from some of the real issues that are going on in our community. So the next time that there is a convening, and not to say that those are not real issues, but the next time there is a town hall on whatever issue, whether it's healthcare, climate change, education, we need to keep this drumbeat on police reform going. We need to make sure that folks understand. I mean, a lot of the panelists have talked about these systemic issues that cause police officers to have to deal with some of the, and of course based on how our systems are structured, to deal with some of these societal ills. So if we're at a town hall about healthcare, well, we need to talk about policing and how fatal police shootings are a healthcare issue. Education, we need to talk about the school to prison pipeline. We need to talk about why we don't need officers in schools with guns harassing, traumatizing our kids. So I want, if there is a takeaway here, it's to make sure that we keep our federal officials sort of in the mix on this particular issue. Don't let them off the hook because something shiny new has come along based on today's headline.
Yes, ma'am. Just a couple of things bother me. First of all, I'd like to say that if we're going to do a documentary, I think we ought to do one and not necessarily focusing on the police department as much as we ought to focus on the issues that are taking place, so you can see it as a national issue rather than one that exists in New York and PG. But the fact of the matter is that there's an element of it in every police department in America because of the culture of policing as well as public safety. Second of all, I want to spend some time with April. Not because I want to, I love April, and I don't walk in the street with Black Lives Matter. I haven't laid down in the street, but I don't walk on the street with them. I don't walk all over the city. I got bad knees, so I can't be laying down and get that's difficult for me. But the reason I want to spend time with it is that, see, I believe I was a black man who happened to be a police officer. I wasn't a police officer. I wasn't a police officer. I was a black man who happened to have a job as a police officer. And while I was on the police department, my job was to make sure that the people who looked like me and lived, because see, I lived in the community. I lived on my footprint. Because see, I believe in that. I believe in the residency thing. When I was working in the 3rd District, I lived on Columbia Road. I would go home. And I didn't take my uniform off because I belonged to the community. I don't belong to the police department. We didn't work. I didn't work for the police department. I worked for the community. And the community was my boss. Yeah, that's who it was. So I knew I was different, but I also knew that I had to do certain things. That's why I used to go to, what was the name of the organization? The Black Political Front. The arch when you all started, we used to go to, and I can't even think of it. But the fact of the matter is that my job as a black man was to make sure that black folk, as it related to public safety practices, not just law enforcement, but to make sure that my people wasn't gonna be abused. And I wasn't gonna wait till it happened in the street. I challenged them in the roll call room. So, and not everybody is like that. But my thing is that I want, this is the same conversation I had with Boone and them. Back over here at Ben Chili Bowl. I know we done been that route before, but there's some things that you need to be aware of because you need to do this. April and them, I just want to spend some time and talk with her about what it is. It's not unusual to be skeptical. I'm skeptical and I don't like police and I used to work there. I'm serious, I don't like them. And you know how I got that way? Working with them. So if I can share that with Eugene and April, they're going to be better off in terms of what it is that's going. I was an activist on the police department, not after the police department, on the police department, because that's the best place to be an activist. Yeah, so you got to do that. And so those who decide that they're going to come and speak up, because everybody's not going to speak up, that's why you need to have that relationship and work on it, and then you can get the kind of thing done. And lastly, let me say, you all need to look